All right, Carol. Well, this has really been quite the process. You began meeting as a council all the way back to 2019, and then the report has finally been released and delivered to Congress just a few weeks ago. So I'm curious what surprised you as part of your involvement in this work, and what really stands out to you as elements that made this a success?
Well, the RAISE Caregiving Advisory Council has been just a life-changing, I think, experience for me. Probably the biggest surprise was the diversity of the types of caregivers and organizations that were represented, as well as the duality of the participants. I think almost everyone that was participating said, I'm a professional, but I'm also a caregiver or have been a caregiver. And so the lived experience that was brought to the table really made a difference, and I think informed some of our discussions.
Mhm. It was really clear as I went through the final strategy that a lot of thoughtful consideration went into the language and terminology that was used to describe issues of family caregiving. And I wonder, can you speak a little bit about some of those conversations and considerations as you were thinking about really defining the issue?
Yes, I think we spent months talking
Sure.
about language and talking about who is a caregiver. So it's very broad. It's not, I mean, we're not just talking about family, we're talking about family of choice. We're talking about persons who are teenagers, who are middle-aged, who are older persons caring for an older person, grandparents raising grandchildren, parents of children that have intellectual disabilities, developmental disabilities, physical disabilities. And so think anyone, and friend, neighbor, partner. So who's a caregiver? Anyone who has a significant, substantial relationship with someone and is involved in their care. That's really the caregiver. And then the second conversation was, how do we be inclusive across the lifespan, across the different cultural significances of caregiving and how we interpret that geographically. There is no one size fits all. It's if you've seen one caregiver, you've seen one caregiver. And so then you put the lived experience on that, and that will change the way a caregiver comes to the table. And we wanted to sound inclusive. So you can imagine in language, how do you be very, very broad and not have 20 adjectives after every single word? So we distilled and distilled. And I think when you read the report, you will find that the language is very precise.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Yeah, very, very great. So last question, and this is a big one for us. You know, when we look at members of our family caregiving funders community, they have invested nearly $1 billion when we looked at grants over the past 2 years toward various caregiving work. And so we know that philanthropy will play a critical role in fueling the implementation of the strategy at the local, at the state, and the national level in the coming years. And I'm really curious, what are the areas that you see philanthropy having the biggest impact over the coming time frame, and where should we really be thinking about investments at this point?
Well, if you look through the materials, you asked me what one of the biggest surprises was. And at the first of the meeting, we met all the federal partners who have a program that is for caregivers, 15 federal partners. But the number of programs was much more than that. And they created an inventory of all of them. And so I've been in this space for years and years, and I was still surprised. So looking at that list of the 15 agencies, in the strategic plan, there's 345 actions that the federal government is going to take. So, all right, so if you're in philanthropy, look at what is being done. Those federal agencies and state agencies also are limited to what already exists. And so with the legislation, we couldn't create anything new. So they're going to be implementing based on current programs, based on current dollars. So philanthropy looks at this and says, what have we never had? And probably the biggest jumping off point for me is the care force. Are the direct care workers? Is it robust? Are they trained? Are they recognized? And we found during the pandemic, we already knew there was a shortage. That shortage has been exacerbated. We had members of the committee who actually had disabilities and had to move back in with family because there was no one to provide that direct care, which, for an adult who's been living independently all their life, that was a huge setback. And for those of us who have older relatives, we are asking someone to take care of our most trusted our most trusted person in our family, someone we love, and yet the pay is not there, the education's not there, and the people are not there. And so to philanthropy, I would say, what is your mission? This is such a complex issue. There is something for everyone. If women's issues are of significance, this is absolutely head on a woman's issue, because caregiving is marginalized and is seen as women's work, and therefore the pay is less. If it's economic security, if we think of caregiving as a human rights issue, if you look at the United Nations rights for humans, a right to financial security, a right to physical security, a right to education, a right to leisure. If you go through these, you see that caregivers don't get to experience those rights broadly. So human rights is another area. The economic security, do you have to give up your job? Are you going to leave $300,000 in retirement and income benefits on the table because you quit your job to be a caregiver? If you are thinking about grandparents raising grandchildren, if you're thinking about justice, so many of our grandparent caregivers, someone's in jail, someone has substance abuse. The list goes on. And so to my philanthropic partners, I would say, what are you passionate about? I guarantee you there is something in the strategic plan that you can address, that you can target dollars, because the need is so great and the playing field is so wide, you can have an impact as a funder.
Wow. Well, thank you, Carol, so much. Thank you for all of your expertise that has gone into this process, for representing philanthropy so well. And we will miss you at the conference, but really appreciate you spending time to give some thoughts and help us think about this time to come. So thank you, Carol.
Thank you very much.